Hello, good evening, and welcome again, as always, to Sunday Live Spectrum Voices. We'll be joining Harry to take the helm on the Facebook discussion in a little while. I talk at the beginning here about what we're doing here at Autistic Radio. This last week, the first of what looks like to be an annual event, the NCON conference, the Neuroconvergence conference, took place. It was unusual because it was not one of those autistic-only spaces that sometimes exist at places like Autscape. It was not ghettoized in any way. The other delegates were often people from positions within government or the NHS, as well as a good spattering of autistically led groups and APOs. Yeah, I think it's a good idea for us here at Autistic Radio to follow NCON and one of their projects called The Beautiful. So I'm putting that as a possibility out to the steering group here, that we look into that a bit more. The other thing that happened this week was I took part in a presentation alongside Dr. Virginia Bovell, who has a podcast here with us. She's making a series with Dr. Colette Ryan. They talk about alternatives to mainstream education. They talk about alternatives to traditional ABA, and they talk about DIR floor time. Exploring common ground. I was taking part at the Research Institute remotely while she was at a book launch to her recent book. And the Research Institute contacted Autistic Radio afterwards, showing interest in what we were doing. So we can watch that space and see that there might be a little bit of a link coming in that direction. So, yes, we're doing plenty, but that's just the things that we're thinking of. There's a lot of you out there now, and I want you to feel absolutely welcome to taking a bigger part in what we do here, joining us in any kind of way. The more diverse, the more different experiences we allow to be disseminated out there about autism, the broader the understanding will be of the autistic experience. Let's go beyond ghettos of thought. Let's have a conversation amongst ourselves and with the professionals that leads people to different ideas and leads yourself to perhaps a different perspective also. So there is an audio revolution, an autistic revolution happening here at Autistic Radio for you to take part in. Contact news@autisticradio.com. Can I hand over to you now for the highlight of my Sunday, Harry?
Yes, no problem. Just before we start, you're aware that we're not on Facebook Live? There seems to be an issue there.
I'll look into it.
No problem. Just to let you know. Well, good evening, everyone. Thanks, Jules. Good evening, everyone. This is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 1st of June, 2025. This is where we go through the recent Facebook posts on the Autistic Radio page and the topics and discussions based on them. So let's start with the first post, which is from Neurowild. And Neurowild is a page, speech therapist, illustrator, arts and humanities website. I'm autistic and ADHD speech pathologist, illustrator, advocate, and mum to 3 ND kiddos. And what Neurowild has shared is a personal cookbook. And it shows pictures of the cookbook itself. And what M says is, I want to show you something special. I want to show you something special. When I was 18, I moved out of home and went to uni. I went with 0 cooking skills and very few life skills, let's be honest. My sister, probably 11 or 12 at the time, made this cookbook for me and surprised me with it before I left. It had a bunch of recipes that I had grown up eating, broken down into easy steps. This book was such a gift. My sister recognised, with nothing but sweetness, the areas I would no doubt struggle with when trying to cook for myself, and she gave me what I needed. It explains how to fry meat, how to boil water, how to know when pasta is done. She included tips for convenience, reassurance about weird ingredients and processes, references that were relevant to her family alone, as well as her own beautiful personality. She gave me access to the familiar safe foods that I would likely miss when I left. And she gave me the steps in a way that I could follow. Instead of making me feel incompetent or helpless for needing such a thing, this cookbook felt like the biggest, tightest cuddle. No executive function skills today, no problem. As far as accommodations go, this one was absolutely spectacular. It still makes me smile, all these years later. Enjoy, the more the merrier. What's people's thoughts on this?
Well, my mother, when she was seriously ill, she came home from hospital and taught me how to cook the same way she did. And she pretty much had a routine, and I've always kept that routine, and that's why I eat well.
One of the things that helped me a fair wee bit with food and meal planning and stuff was breaking free from this idea that there was like a right way to do all these things. And I remember being at this group, it was like I called Sharing Skills for Life. And people would just chip in like, oh, this is what I've done. Well, this is how I do it. This is how I prep my veggies. This is what I do. And I realized there's so many different ways to do things, and it kind of really freed me up to just find ways that worked for myself. Books can be helpful too, but yeah, there's so many different ways to manage your kitchen.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of when I was moving my own home when I was 20. And even though I did a bit of cooking while I was at the home, I never felt I had the freedom to do too much because I did silly things. I did experimenting sometimes, like ice pole cake and things like that. And I was like, what the hell you do? I don't know, I'm just trying to have things. But when I moved into my own house, I didn't get a cookbook as such, but I had the support worker from SAMH, the Scottish Association for Mental Health at the time, and they helped me with things like not actually help me to cook, but obviously the instructions to cook. And I went to an occupational therapist that showed me how to cook, and my mum and dad as well. My dad's a good cook, and he kind of showed me tips here and there to keep things simple. Because the worry that I had was it just seemed when I was looking at my mum and my dad cooking in the home, that it looked more complicated than it probably is. Of course, it depends on the meal and how many people you're making the meal for. So I was always apprehensive. And people are always coming up with tips and all that, even for, right up to this current day, because I'm not a big cooking fan. But even just recently, my mum and dad and my sister as well was asking, would you like an air fryer? And to me, even though I've heard how great air fryers are, I didn't really bother about it. So they bought me one anyway, just to help me out, because they sort of knew due to laziness as well, my diet was limited to microwavable stuff. And the reason they knew that is because I told them. And then they say, use an air fryer to make yourself sort of kind of decent meals, or at least a meal. And I was kind of getting a wee bit kind of touchy about being contested about how I live. But then I thought, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to use this air fryer and see if it actually is as simple as made out. Because sometimes the autistic mind complicates something that is simple and then makes something that's complicated simpler. It's just sometimes how backward things seem, especially in my life. But it turned out to be the greatest thing that I've ever got, or one of the greatest things I've ever got in many years. And I've been using it quite a lot since I first tried it. Just it cooks different things, quite quickly, and I have more meals now than I did before. So it's good to have that sort of kind of support to help cook and help, get by. So this cookbook is just an example of that. And what I like about it is it was done by an 11 or 12-year-old to someone, which I found very cute and charming and very good to read. I know that 11 and 12-year-olds are capable of that, of course they are, but it's just nice and sweet to read that a younger sibling did that. The next post is from Blue Sky Learning, which is a mental health service page. And it says, we support neurodivergent individuals globally with coaching, counselling and consulting services, and they're based in Canada. And what it's talking about is neurodivergence disclosure. And the introductory text says, are you currently debating whether to disclose your neurodivergence in the workplace or classroom? Deciding whether to disclose your neurodivergence at school or work is a deeply personal and complex choice that can be difficult to navigate. While this process of self-advocacy can be empowering and some with benefit, while this process of self-advocacy can be empowering and come with benefits for some, others may worry about the risks that can come along with self-disclosure, such as discrimination, stigma, and misunderstanding. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to deciding to disclose neurodivergence. Let's delve into this post that explores what self-disclosure means, its potential benefits and risks, and how to make an informed decision which supports your mental health and personal needs, whether you're a student or a professional. And the presentation itself says, should you disclose your neurodivergence at work? And basically, what does self-disclosure mean? Self-disclosure is when you share some aspect of your identity with others, such as an employer or colleague. This may involve sharing your neurodivergent identity, whether it's autism, ADHD, dyslexia, etc. It can happen at any time, including during hiring, after starting the job, or when requesting accommodations. The risks of disclosure. There is a stigma that exists in regard to neurodivergence. As a result, sharing your neurodivergent identity may come with risks. You get misunderstood or underestimated. You experience ableism or microaggressions. You lose privacy or autonomy. And be concerned around job security or advancement. The benefits of disclosure. Despite the risks that self-disclosure may pose, there are also several benefits involved with self-disclosure, including access workplace accommodations, reduce the pressure to mask, set boundaries around sensory or communication needs, build understanding with your manager or team, and advocate for neuro-inclusive policies. So, doing a personal pros and cons check-in on this, whether deciding whether to disclose your neurodivergence is a personal decision. You can weigh these pros and cons. You can weigh the pros and cons by asking yourself, do I psychologically feel safe? Do I feel psychologically safe in this workplace? Do I need accommodations to do my best work? What are the potential impacts, positive and negative, on my mental health? Am I sharing from empowerment or pressure? And it was into strategies. I'll stop there to see what people's thoughts on it at the moment.
I think the most important part of the post there is the really clear pointing out that this is a balance of positive and negatives that only the individual can make a decision about. I am in a fortunate situation where disclosure to anybody wouldn't really affect my life in any way, shape or form. No boss, it's not important to me. It doesn't reduce my opportunities. Handing somebody, even in your own sphere around you, your diagnosis is handing them something that they don't understand but might have prejudices about. And once you give them that piece of information, if they're interested, they will gather information about that, which may or may not be helpful to you. I think there are a few places where I would ever be comfortable with advising anybody to come out as an autistic person in the workplace. My feeling would be caution for most people. If you are doing that, you are doing that as a very conscious, risk-taking, pioneer kind of person, and you deserve other people to respect you for that. But the reality of the workplace around me is that you would be a pioneer, and that's a tough place to be.
Or perhaps you would be weird in a space where weird is not really a positive thing. Weird can be positive if everybody's kind of sharing the vibe and wanting to explore it. And at that point, it's not necessarily even weird, if you follow my drift.
It comes up with strategies on this. And what it says is strategy 1, choose what and how much to share. If you do decide to share, you don't have to disclose everything. It's up to you to decide whether to disclose with whom and how much to share. An example of sharing could be, I have a neurodevelopmental condition. I have a neurodevelopmental condition that impacts my focus and processing speed. You can also choose the language that aligns with your comfort and boundaries. Strategy 2, time your disclosure wisely. There is stigma involved with hiring someone who is neurodivergent. Regardless of this stigma, you may need accommodations, and this is totally okay. If you need accommodations during the interview, you may choose to disclose during the hiring process. If you don't feel comfortable with this or don't need to disclose yet, you may until trust is built or needs arise. Strategy 3, ask for what you need. Human Resources is legally obligated in most countries, including Canada, to provide reasonable accommodations. If you disclose, be ready to share specific accommodations such as noise-cancelling headphones, flexible deadlines, location and hours, alternative seating arrangements, or clear written instructions. And strategy 4, prepare emotionally. Disclosing your neurodivergent identity may be emotionally taxing. To reduce the strain on your emotions, you may wish to rehearse or script what you may want to say, or bring a support person if needed, for example, a union representative. If it goes poorly, document everything and seek out neurodiversity affirming spaces outside work to decompress. What's Peel's thoughts on this?
I never, because I haven't worked since diagnosis, but 20 years ago, I went to work for the DWP, and I'd just come off of a long period of sickness due to depression. And after 7 weeks, they sent me for an occupational health medical. And then 5 weeks later, they called me in the office, and literally within minutes, I was sat outside unemployed. And I got a copy of the medical, and I actually passed it. But it said I wouldn't give 5 years good service. I'd been there 12 weeks. I hadn't had a day off sick. I was supposed to be doing okay. And the medical said I'd passed, but I wouldn't give 5 years good service. So I was dismissed on the spot.
Was that due to your autism disclosure?
It was pre-diagnosis, but I'd been off long-term sick due to depression in my previous job, 6 months. But I mean, up front, I told them what had happened, and yet they were still happy to give me the job. And then, like I say, they sent me for an occupational health medical. The ironic thing is, if I'd been on sick benefits and I'd got the same result from an occupational health medical, I would have been considered fit to work. But with the DWP, they didn't consider me. They didn't consider I'd give 5 years good service, so I was dismissed on the spot.
Jules, can you put the screen share onto the one we're talking about, please, for Nicola?
It's not me that's controlling, it's Raymond.
Raymond, can you put it back one, please?
Yeah, I've figured it out, but so you were talking about the strategies there, which was my confusion. I found it on the Autistic Teacher's actual page. Is that where you were quoting it from? But I'll take it back to the original post, which didn't seem to have the list of strategies you were talking about.
Just take it back a bit, please.
So is that the one?
No, it's the one that's from Blue Sky
Hang
Learning.
on. That one.
No,
Blue Sky Learning. Oh, right.
it's that one. The only reason I said anything is because can you mute, please? The only reason I raised, I didn't want to kind of, obviously, because I know people are working hard and I appreciate you doing this, but it's just so that Nicola's kept in the loop, because I know that it's very, not just for Nicola, but other people that may not be on Facebook as well. It's just so they know what we're talking about. So that's this one we're talking about. And all the things that I'd read out is on that picture screen called Should You Disclose Your... Called Should You
Got
Disclose
it, Harry.
Passionate Work.
No, it's my explanation is my dog wanted out and I had to go out and I came back in. I was like, didn't know where I was. So I assumed I was in the correct one, but nobody said.
That's fine, Raymond. I wasn't sure who was doing it. I can only assumed it was Jules, but it's yourself, so I know what to say next time. I'll just put it in the post. So all good now. Thank you. Just talking about this particular topic, it's always one I found fascinating, because it's been already said, it's like this sort of disclosure does seem a hell of a risk because of stigma, especially with employers. Because if you, I'm guessing here because I haven't really been employed. I've worked, but I haven't been employed. So, and when I've been unemployed, it's been under sort of kind of support anyway. So there's never been too much of an issue of, stigma, although that obviously isn't guaranteed. The thing that puts me off the kind of work environment, thinking in my head about work environment is you hear stories of bullying and intimidation from other people for all different reasons. And that just seems like an opportunity for someone to either get taken advantage of or just picked on in general. And the work environment, the employment environment just gives that sort of, it just seems if, I know the recommendation, it says you don't have to give your life story basically. And, I've did that in many ways, not because of work, just because of explaining myself. I've got a habit of giving too much information that's not really required. Usually because giving such information is emotional and sometimes it's not controlled. So I just find this kind of interesting because there'll be so many people that have, when they have disclosed such information, it hasn't done any good, and some that it has done very well, and there's some that haven't done it at all and it hasn't affected them, and they feel if they did do it, it would actually more of a negative if they did it than just keeping it to themselves. It all depends on the individual and the individual needs, and of course what the work is.
I was at NCon 25, the first NCon, and one of the presentations was Autistic Doctors International. They have quite a large membership of people who work in the medical profession and needed to create a network and a group together because they could not disclose at work. An almost, anonymous organisation that does good work reaching out. And we're talking about a profession that is highly skilled, highly regarded, has a higher percentage of neurodivergent people in it in the first place, often because of their educational benefits, and very few of those people who have almost entire control over their lives actually come out and disclose as autistic. And one of the things is the shame that goes with autism. There's a whole embodied shame that happens around autism. So people feel entirely socially disadvantaged, and that reduces their ability to come out as confidently autistic. They're not confidently autistic. They feel bad.
Apologies for the private text. The second link is for the link to the document that you don't need to go through Facebook through if you want to have a look at it. Apologies I did this in the first place, and I'll do that for other posts that I can do that so that others can get involved in the conversation.
Appreciate that, Harry. Sorry, I don't really have any thoughts to say about this one. I'm going to go along. There's a series of online workshops that are talking about like autism in the workplace. I was going to go and check them out, but I think it just feels really intimidating. It's I feel like in the past, I look back and I'm like, gosh, it's like a sense of either disclose or have everyone just think I'm a bitch. Seems to be my options in life, and I
think possibly go for the bitch, Nicola.
You say that, but it's not an easy place to live. I've been there. Do you know? That's what people just thought when I was at school. People have thought in jobs, and I really, really, really amn't. But I think that people don't read our expressions very well. When I've met autistic people in the wild, I found it really easy, intuitive to be able to sort of look at their facial expressions and know that, they're maybe finding things a bit overwhelming. But I feel like neurotypicals tend to see particularly facial expressions that are overwhelming, just judge them to be oh, that person's, make up stories about it. Just an awful lot of having your difficulties misconstrued and stuff as well, I think can be really hard. I think of other women I know, and the challenges, there's one person I know who's been able to kind of create such a niche for themselves. They've got a really unique role, and they've been able to say, well, actually, to do the show, I need a private room. I can't be interrupted. If you want to speak to me, you're going to have to make a meeting. And she's been able to do those things for herself. But my career got knocked right back when I became a mum. I couldn't participate in that level of work. And it feels like the more down the ladder, as it were, that you fall, the less your needs are even matter. I mean, you can just be made to feel really disposable. Yeah.
sounds like your friend has a bit of self-confidence, though. Didn't Sean in Embrace Autism mention at one point, was he part of a training program, and what is it they call it? Confidence building. If you have had knockbacks and that make you a bit intimidated by certain kind of working environments or public environments, you can kind of go through a process of learning if you're that way inclined. Because it's all this sort of passing stuff, isn't it? And these subjects were like coming out or, disclosing. I always think like, okay, if it was your sexuality, who would you tell? Or something else. It's not everyone.
For me, I think the imbalance of power for most people in the workplace means it's very unlikely that they are going to find the kind of niche that Nicola talked about. It just isn't the world we live in mostly, and unfortunately I have to say that there are people who are trying to dismantle the things that make it possible for us to feel safe and make it possible for us to feel as though it's possible to disclose. There's a backlash against the idea of neurodiversity in some of the political areas. So maybe people should, really plan and really build themselves up and really know what they're doing, and maybe give a chance for themselves to get the lie of the land for a good period of time, especially if they're recently, if it's a recent understanding of themselves, their autism.
I'd like to ask, what is it that people are actually disclosing? Is it a diagnosis or an experience of themselves? I mean, what do we really know about our own autism?
Well, the way I'm thinking of it is, it's like I've been to job interviews, and I think most of the time I've actually got job interviews is to tick the box to put myself under the disability bracket, and then under the disability bracket, autism's there somewhere, and I tick that. So it's like I tick a box for them because it shows that they're being fair in their process. But during the interview, I didn't really disclose anything apart from that. But then I'm thinking during the interview, when they're talking about the work involved, and the work that I generally went for, or always went for, was admin. And I always felt that if I was given a good chance, I could do the admin, fairly well. It's just getting through that side of things and the social side of things. But if you disclosed that you had a diagnosis, and that's what it looked upon as diagnosis. Some people that are more, more progressive maybe may think it's identity, but it just depends, because at the end of the day, they're looking for someone that they want to be reliable and won't let them down. And I just get a feeling if you say that you've got a diagnosis of anything, it's like, how reliable are you going to be? How are you going to work under pressure? How many times are you going to be off work? It's that sort of thing. And then it's all about pride as well. It's like, sometimes when you're talking about being autistic, even though in platforms such as this, certainly in my case, I talk about things quite proudly, and I say who I am, etc., and it feels okay. But in certain environments, it's like you're saying there's something wrong with you, and you need help to be able to do something that other people seem to be doing okay. It just seems like you're giving that out. It's like you're basically telling your employer, you basically feel that you're telling your employer that you're a problem, and they must put things in place to help you overcome a problem so that you can work for them. And I think that's what the environment that we live in, the culture we live in, make people feel like. So that's probably why a lot of people don't disclose. And many that don't disclose actually get away with it. I don't like saying that term, but it seems to work out for them and they do well. But for others, they end up breaking down and end up not working out. And they probably feel in the end, if they did, it might have worked out better. But you just don't know. It's always a risk. It's always a gamble because you don't know how other people are going to take you at face value.
I think, aren't the unemployment figures for people with autism really high? And is that because they have autism? Is that because they tell people that they have autism and it stumps their employment opportunities? When is it because they've told people that they have that they're ND and the employer thinks, oh well, I don't really know about that. So is the issue? The issue is obviously not with us, but the issue is with the employer, I think.
Jules?
Disclosure or not, the higher unemployment figures for autistic people has been a constant. So there's not necessarily about disclosure at all. Autistic people do not suit the recruitment process often, and they get weeded out, even perhaps if they would be particularly suitable for a role. It's unfortunate. It's a very unequal hit and miss system, recruitment. It's very much biased towards employing the same kind of people that you've got around you already, looking for sameness, socially even. And if we look at it from the UK's perspective, about half of the people who are employed work for quite relatively small companies, small and medium-sized companies. And if you're employing, then you're taking on quite a lot of different skills and pieces of information and risk. And it might be that employing somebody who is disabled in any version of disability is an unknown quantity for the employer that just looks like another risk, another job, another, oh dear, I've heard things about this that could go very wrong because these people have rights, depending on where they're getting their information from. And people are generally, oh, it looks like too much trouble. So there's almost there's a reluctance just on the fact that they want an easier life, because it's hard enough doing what they're doing, I think.
There are like companies that have got that are actively recruiting autistic people. There's like quite a lot of articles online, software companies and things like that too. And I think like I know in Scotland, Access to Work are there to try and support you into work too, and I think that there'll be like the confidence building stuff too. But I feel like I wonder what it'd be like to apply for a job if it's one of the companies that had like autistic pathways and stuff. I probably think they'd be looking for younger people than myself.
The next post is from the autistic teacher. And the autistic teacher is a public figure, autistic and proud, sharing insight and understanding to help the autistic community, a page based in the UK. And what they're talking about is autistic inertia. And it's a presentation, and it's only on Facebook, unfortunately. Or I would put a thing up. The presentation says, autistic in a tier. I have heard autistic in a tier described as not wanting to do something, being stubborn. Although it's characterised as a resistance to change, it is really misunderstood. Autistic people think very deeply, and so it can take longer to stop all those thoughts and start something else. However, autistic in a tier also offers strengths. A double-edged sword. Autistic in a tier often leads to hyperfocus. A state of intense concentration that allows us to dive deeply into a task, achieving remarkable productivity and creativity. However, this can become a double-edged sword, as transitioning out of this focus can be difficult, potentially leading to neglect of other necessary tasks or self-care. Stress and autistic irritation. Stress tends to exacerbate the difficulties associated with irritation. Under pressure, the ability to manage transitions and task initiation diminishes. The ability to manage transitions and task initiation diminishes, making it harder to move beyond irritation. The paradox of autistic irritation. At the heart of autistic irritation is a paradox. It represents both a challenge and a strength, embodying the complexity of many autistic traits. Our attention to detail, capacity for deep focus, and consistency can be powerful assets. Yet they also highlight the hurdles we face in navigating the demands and expectations of daily life. Strategies for managing irritation. Structured environment. Creating this with visual supports helps ease task initiation and transitions. Routines. Establishing clear routines and predictability can reduce anxiety, making it easier to manage daily tasks. Support and chunking. Breaking tasks into manageable chunks and offering support can assist in overcoming irritation. By understanding and developing strategies that acknowledge both the challenges and strengths of autistic irritation, we can support autistic people in harnessing their unique abilities. This is the first time I've ever heard this word and what it's about. What's others' thoughts on this? Have I heard of it before?
It's inertia. The word is inertia. I was wondering what you were talking about.
Well, apologies for the pronunciation, but just before I started talking about it, I did actually check elsewhere on how to pronounce it, and that's the way it told me to pronounce it. So what's people's thoughts on inertia then? You don't want me to read it out again, do you? I can if you want.
I don't quite know why they use that term. Isn't inertia the tendency of a body to rest and not move? It's a bit of a strange. It seems to infer that things have to change around us, and that we don't change things. It strikes me as a bit strange.
My experience of like inertia is I could get stuck with stuff, and the more overwhelmed I get, the more stuck like I can get. It feels like I can't like change gears. At its worst, when it was really bad, it felt like being completely locked in. I couldn't move sometimes to like couldn't figure out what the first task that I needed to do was. So it was just stuckness. And I can get a bit into that kind of feeling. If there's something that my brain gets really obsessed with or stuck on, it can be really hard to do other stuff even if I want to.
When I experience that, it's what I call zoning out. But for me, that's probably a more positive kind of experience where I'm not, expected to be doing anything particular. But I've got like a conflict of activities. And so I just kind of go into a kind of neutral zone.
For editing purpose, I'll read again, and then we can go back to it. So the next post is from the autistic teacher, who's a public figure, autistic and proud, sharing insight and understanding to help the autistic community based in the UK. And what they've shared is a presentation on autistic inertia. And what it says is, I have heard autistic inertia described as not wanting to do something, being stubborn. Although it's characterised as a resistance to change, it is really misunderstood. Autistic people think very deeply, and so it can take longer to stop all those thoughts and start something else. However, autistic inertia also offers strength. A double-edged sword. Autistic inertia often leads to hyperfocus, a state of intense concentration that allows us to dive deeply into a task, achieving remarkable productivity and creativity. However, this can become a double-edged sword, as transitioning out of this focus can be difficult, potentially leading to neglect of other necessary tasks or self-care. Stress and autistic inertia. Stress tends to exacerbate the difficulties associated with inertia. Under pressure, the ability to manage transitions and task initiation diminishes, making it harder to move beyond inertia. The paradox of autistic inertia. At the heart of autistic inertia is a paradox. It represents both a challenge and a strength, embodying the complexity of many autistic traits. Our attention to detail, capacity for deep focus, and consistency can be powerful assets, yet they also highlight the hurdles we face in navigating the demands and expectations of daily life. The strategies for managing inertia. Structured environment. Creating a structured environment with visual supports helps ease task initiation and transition. Routines. Establishing clear routines and predictability can reduce anxiety, making it easier to manage daily tasks. And support and chunking. Breaking tasks into manageable chunks and offering support can assist in overcoming inertia. By understanding and developing strategies that acknowledge both the challenges and strengths of autistic inertia, we can support autistic people in harnessing their unique abilities. What's your thoughts?
I'm kind of glad they brought up the positive attributes of this situation, but also qualifying it with the how that can then cause a bit of, disconnection or disjunction or difficulty reintegrating or getting back into what is expected of you, say, in a kind of social or working setting.
I'm just trying to work out what this actually is, because I can identify with what it's saying in a way, because I've got an overthinking method, an overthinking way, overdoing way in terms of feeling hard to switch off from certain tasks, especially now I do a lot of things I've been doing this for the last 10 years, online. So it's always there. It's always, Facebook groups, Facebook pages, sharing information, keep things up to date, that sort of thing. And what I've noticed is, like, for instance, when people are talking about going on holiday and switching off, and then I sat and think about that. Because I've been places, I've went, for instance, I went to Blackpool on a weekend for my sister's 40th birthday. And there was always a time in the day where I checked a Facebook page, including the Autistic Radio one, to make sure it was kept up to date, just sharing something relevant so that it doesn't go dead. And it's like, I need to do this. I can't relax. I can't switch off. I need to do that task. And what I generally do now to make things a bit easier, because I've got that many commitments, maybe that's what inertia is I put it on a list and then I tick it off. Either tick off, on a page, or just mentally just go through the thing, just mentally go through the list to know that I've kind of updated everything that I wanted to do. So is that what inertia is? Or am I looking too much into it?
I was going to put in the text, is inertia the stage between a concentrated flow state and then demand avoidance? But what's striking me is the fact that inertia is kind of seen as a negative word. It's actually not. It's quite neutral. It's a physical state. But in the human context, I think it's seen as kind of standstill or something like that, inability to move. Lack of energy, get up and go even. But so that inclines it towards a negative reading. Whereas I think what the state that it's describing, which happens sometimes when you're concentrating on your flow, as it were, indulging yourself, and then somebody comes in and says, okay, let's do this. And you go, no, that's disturbing my routine, my thing. You're asking me now to do something out with that. Oh no. And to cope, sometimes you go into a kind of loop, wondering where to go. Really just want to return to where you were. But yeah, so at that time it's seen as negative, but maybe it's a survival technique. I'm not sure. I sometimes feel quite positive about that zoning out ability, that neutralizing thing. And so maybe the positive side of it is learning to cope with that demand avoidance that creeps in.
Yeah, when I've done a research, it says that autistic inertia, it refers to the difficulty some individuals experience starting, stopping, or switching tasks. I can relate to that.
Which means they don't initiate things or cease things. They're kind of in the flow. But are they in their own flow or a communal flow?
Sometimes I get caught and end up doing a lot of things at once. The internet's good at that, especially Facebook. And because I've got these different, it's because I'm involved in, I'm involved about 5, just as a random guess now, different organisations and groups. And the information sharing is what I do in all of them. So sometimes, if I'm doing something for Autistic Radio, for instance, and then I'm having a look at something, there'll be an announcement, the sort of thing that it comes up in the menu that something's happened, somebody's commented or something has been updated, and then it just catches my eye and I go into that and end up going into this other thing. I thought, I better deal with this just now and get back to that. It's just, I sometimes jump all over the place. That's partly why I do the list thing, mostly just so that I make sure that I get all the tasks done in a way that's healthy and satisfying, rather than all this panic that sometimes I put myself into. And I'm sure that a lot of people do this as well. It's like wanting to get something done quickly, especially if it's something. Usually in my head, I over dramatise certain activities, and generally it's activities that it's crisis only I know about. It's like middle of the night, I'm thinking I better deal with this because this is a crisis. Then I'm trying to kind of reason myself like, I'm the only person that knows about this. I'm the only person getting wound up. Deal with it in a more appropriate time and sort it out rather than jumping all over the place. I think coffee's got a lot to do with that, enough.
I liked that, Harry. That was great.
I work for an organisation every 18 months. There was a reorganisation and I stopped engaging with it. I just carried on doing what I was doing. And my job, they say, oh, you're doing technical now, not business, or you're doing business now, not technical. And I just kept doing the same thing. But at one point, they actually took the technical section away and put me in another section. And I literally spent a month staring out the window doing nothing. So they moved me back into my old job, which in theory didn't exist. And I kept doing that for about 2.5 years, a job that didn't exist. I mean, it was just crazy, really. And everything, I knew exactly how things should be. And if you said, oh, new product, my brain would just think, da, 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 and it would know what to do. And I used to be quite relaxed because my brain had already worked out everything.
Is that one of those jobs where the news broke that there are all these jobs around us that are like fake jobs almost, you know? It's like people are out there employed and being paid, but they're almost doing nothing.
There's this thing, I worked in an admin support section at one time, and I think there were 5 of us, and well, it was 3 when I went in, and the boss man went off sick because he couldn't cope with it. They put me in charge. There was 5 of us at one time, and one day I said, this is middlemanism gone crazy, because someone wants something, they'll come and tell us what they want, and then we go off and ask someone else for the same thing. And I said they should just go direct. And I mean, I actually got my big promotion as such. And the section before I left, I got the section from 5 people down to 1 because it was just unnecessary. You know, it's like if you're gonna make a phone call, you don't ask someone else to dial the number for you. I mean, it's just crazy.
Kind of interesting what you said about staring out the window, because I love staring out windows, and it's like if you were a creative person, say even a comedy script writer, staring out a window might be a great thing because that's where you may be mulling over ideas and getting great ideas. But that was just a wee sideline to the experience, which was obviously maybe a negative one within your working environment.
You know, I had a really good job. I really enjoyed it. And they said, we're splitting business and technical. Technical's going to go into another part of the building. And I went there and I was given 3 areas of responsibility. And the first one, I went to a meeting and they said, well, this won't be doing anything for 18 months. The second one, we're not doing anything for 12 months. And the third one was just pie in the sky. And I mean, it might sound daft, but I was getting paid whatever it was, silly money at the time. I was getting paid like £18,000 a year to stare out the window. And when the big boss came down to see how much we liked his reorganisation, I said, it's really been bad for me because I'm basically doing nothing. And later on, he was the person, when I complained about a new manager, he was the person who judged my grievance and said I made the whole thing up. And he'd made it well known he hated my guts, but there you go.
What this reminds me of is something that I always say. When things seem to get complicated and people complicate things, obviously they've got the reasons to do it. There'll be reasons to complicate it, for reasons to actually complicate it on purpose. But it seems that a lot of people, in general, in jobs and in life, really, it just seems like they complicate it to try to make it simple. And what I say is, keep things simple. I know life isn't simple, but keep it as simple as possible. And it just drives me crazy when things like this happen. And the comment was saying, is inertia a reaction to burnout? Is that? Is that what it is?
It's
Just quick,
connected.
just quick, that where I worked, someone would write down when they wanted a car and the days and the dates. They would write it on a piece of paper and then hand it to someone in our section, and we would get the form out of the cupboard and fill the form in for them and send it off. I mean, that's how ridiculous. I don't know if constant change is not a good thing. I don't know. I was pre-diagnosis then. I don't know if the reason that things started to go wrong was because there was too much change and I didn't cope with it. I was still trying to keep going.
Yeah, I was responding to the comment about inertia as a reaction to burnout, say. And from what I understand, it's like the inertia is to do with our executive function difficulties, which are meant to be a feature of autism. And that stress and like burnout and dysregulation will all make that a lot more difficult, if that makes sense. But that seems to be like a core part, core part of the autistic experience.
The next post is from Autism Southeast, and it's a non-profit organisation. Autism Southeast is a family-run and autistic-led organisation supporting autistic people based in the UK. And it says, we are often asked what we do, and they shared the following to explain what they do. Autism Southeast ASE is a family-run and autistic-led organisation supporting autistic children, adults and their families based in North Kent, England. Mandy and Tim Cook have 4 children, 3 diagnosed autistic. Mandy is autistic herself and founded ASE after experiencing isolation and a lack of support. She is the lead teacher for an autism specialist provision and is the autistic teacher on social media with over 160,000 followers. Tim Cook works tirelessly to support autistic people and their families and is an autism specialist teaching assistant. Tim and Mandy, with the help of volunteers, run fun events, groups and activities for autistic children and adults. Monthly groups include Lego groups, girls group, youth group, nurse battles, adult group, creative group and more. We also hold one-off events and information talks which will be advertised on our website and Facebook page. No diagnosis is needed, as we know people can wait years. Our mission is to support the autistic community, embracing differences and celebrating diversity. What's people's thoughts?
It sounds great, doesn't it? all these different kinds of activities, autistically led, way cheaper than it would be to provide this same service if it was run by one of the main charities. This is probably one of the models that we'll look back on and try and copy.
I find Autism Hampshire really good. They do serendipity social groups. They've, because we're in the New Forest, they do walks in the New Forest, and they're hoping to set up a running group. They have art groups. They do lots of activities. So I think they're a relatively small charity. So anything that helps people, brings people together, and so they can share experiences and advice is a good thing.
What I like about this is it sort of links in from what we're talking about earlier on. Just links in with the person behind the post, and it's the autistic teacher. We were talking, the autistic teacher was speaking about inertia, autistic inertia. And it's just good that, well, the information sharing is great, fantastic, and as we've known, as we've seen, and as we've heard, of good conversation on it. It's good to get background on the person or people behind it, and it's good to, especially this day and age, it's good to read stuff that's positive and these services that, even though they're only located in a certain area, it's like they're out there and it helps a lot of people, particularly in the climate that we're in today.
I think it's quite a nice way to connect with other humans, is like in little community groups. When I did a dressmaking class for a bit, it was just like really nice to learn around other people, and it was like there wasn't a big need for a lot of conversation, and there's a nice boundary in a way around if you're going along to do something as a group at a workshop, or say if it's whether it's to do with like a sport or a craft or a language or something like that, you can kind of just bring your attention, bring the conversation back to the activity, and so much easier than big free open space socializing.
The next post is from Autism Initiatives, who are a non-profit organisation. Autism Initiatives is a registered charity providing specialist autism services in the UK, Ireland and Isle of Man since 1972. We work positively alongside autistic people, their families and carers, providing specialist services tailored to each individual. And what they've shared is a quote. And it's a quote from Tia about why she loves the work she does at Autism Initiatives. And it says, "Working alongside the people we support and helping them to improve their quality of life are my favourite parts of working at the organisation. Making an impact and seeing people achieve their goals after difficult experiences keeps me driven." And the supporting text says, Tia first joined the Autism Initiatives team as a support worker. Tia was 18 when she started in her first role with us in 2015. And since then, she's had the opportunity to progress into senior and management positions across the organisation. Visit our website to read more about Tia's career journey at Autism Initiatives. What's people's thoughts on this post?
I was at the conference Build, representing Autistic Radio and Autistic Association, and I was on a table for the evening meal with a lady who had overall control over the world of autism initiatives in some capacity. I described some things that I had experienced from over the border, and it was interesting speaking with a lady and getting a sense of the way Autism Initiatives England runs. I think in general it was a positive experience speaking with her, and it's possible that we might have some kind of co-production in the future with Autism Initiatives England, but I would be more hesitant to have a co-production with Autism Initiatives Scotland.
Just to ask for information, even though I'm aware of things happening in the past, what is the difference of the feeling and relationship or trust between England and Scotland branches of autism initiatives?
I don't know the politics, and I wouldn't want to hazard a guess. I got a reasonable impression from this person. It's only a first impression. It's only over conversations over an evening meal. I haven't got the same kind of positive experience of visiting a project of autism initiatives, having conversations with staff at autism initiatives, going on a one of their programs with autism initiatives, being signed up as having autism initiatives and number 6 as my provider at the moment from the health service. I don't have the same kind of positive vibe about those. That's all I'm really saying.
Yeah, feel is very important.
The lady I met came from a different kind of marginalised community herself, and she was very vocal on the neurodiversity paradigm and the inclusion of autistic people within services and service provision. So listening to her, it ticked boxes which I haven't had ticked before.
Yeah, I feel very positive about people when I feel good being with them rather than agreeing with anything they might know or say.
The next post is from the CamCreate Autism and ADHD Support, which is an e-commerce website page. The CamCreate Your Diversity with You in Mind, Kelsey Mack. And the post is the following. Hi everyone, my name is Kelsey. I love my family, my friends, my jobs, and playing the PS5. I'm also autistic. My 20s were filled with lots of mental health breakdowns, depression, anxiety. The list goes on. I lived like this for almost 10 years. It wasn't until I was transferred to a new psychologist who immediately started an autism assessment on me. The process was long, and during that time I was working with the most incredible occupational therapist. We worked on my dyspraxia and had so many laughs. She actually let me come back after I got an official diagnosis and do education with some of the nursing staff in the department she worked. This process was emotionally taxing, and at the end of it I was diagnosed with autism, ADHD and dyspraxia. I realised my massive depressive episodes were actually autistic burnouts in disguise, and I was able to start putting strategies in place for these burnouts, which began improving my life 3 years ago. My mental health has improved significantly, and I've even started a small business from my home called The Calm Crate, where I create personalised sensory boxes, sensory toys, and clothing. I absolutely love putting together each order, knowing that these items might bring someone the comfort and calm they need. My goal is to support others who might be on a similar path and let them know that they are not alone. For years, I struggled to understand why I felt different or why certain things felt overwhelming, only to discover that I was autistic all along. This diagnosis has helped me understand myself better, and now I want to help others who may be going through the same thing. We all deserve to feel understood, accepted, and celebrated for who we are. What's people's thoughts?
This feels like it ties on a wee bit from the conversation we had about employment, and we're hearing this person's like found a way to take care of themselves and then grow their own little kind of viable business from that. The other thing that really jumped out to me is when she's sharing about getting help from an occupational therapist, and I've had a couple of wee bits of help from Autie, and they're so helpful. It's been quite affirming as well, like, because it's quite practical. A lot of the things that I've learned there. So I found it's kind of made me feel a bit better about myself, as well as getting more of a grasp on like the physical world. So yeah, I kind of just wish that OT was so much more easy to access for everyone. It's been quite a struggle for me and my family.
We actually had Kelsey. Can't remember how long ago it was. It doesn't seem that long ago, but it might be because time going so fast, considering it's now June. A podcast, and Kelsey was talking about a lot of the things that's been basically explained in the post. So it's good to sort of revisit someone that we've spoken to before and that's still sharing the information that's vital to a lot of people. Because these sort of words are so inspirational. Sometimes they're even inspirational to me, even though a lot of the thing it says is completely different. It's like there's certain words and the positive sort of, there's light at the end of the tunnel sort of, the flow of what it's saying or how it's reading. It just it's such a great pick me up. Even though if you've read it before, even you've got a feeling what you know it's going to say when you read it, it's just great to even read it out aloud as I've done tonight. And that sort of positive vibe at the end. It's always great to share. It's always great to even repeat the same sort of messages that many individuals give and the experiences that their life individually is taking a positive turn for the future after such a long time suffering and not knowing what the problem is. And you can see it be a lot of self-blame, all that kind of stuff. A lot of people, judgmental, you're going to go through all that. That's just the way society is, whether intentional or not. So it's good when you read that sort of thing and see that sort of inspirational vibe about these kind of posts.
I had a wee realisation this week about a lot of things seem quite abstract and theoretical. The terms, the language, the descriptions of certain, say, psychological or health issues. And then one day you go, oh, now it makes sense. I'm actually like feeling this in my body. You know, it's like I understand this now. It's no longer an abstract theory. And that takes time. That was quite an odd wee realisation this week.
I remember Kelsey coming from the Calm Crate and talking to us in these short introductions to series, and what I remember most was her arranging things and choosing things to go out in the Calm Crate for somebody and getting a real pleasure and a sense of usefulness from making those decisions around for the person who was ordering, and she described it almost as part of her own need and her own contemplation, a kind of occupational therapy that she was creating in her own business.
Well, ultimately, I think we all want to be our own boss, don't we?
Definitely. But what you described there, Jules, it made me think of like the wand maker or the wand seller in Harry Potter who's like matches the person with the wand, and it's just giving me more and more like evidence that I have for my theory that we're just magical people.
I think you're right, and I think Kelsey would really enjoy you saying that. You know, it was like that a bit.
But it's that punk thing, isn't it? Of like, if it doesn't exist, you've got to create it. And so all these things that were problems, you now have knowledge and experience. So it's like, let's go out and share that.
Yeah, punk is very cooperative in that way. And I want to say that autistic people can be cooperative in circumstances. I sort of see the general feeling from the neurotypical world is it's much more hierarchical, and I know that kind of stuff goes on within autism and autism groups and such like, but there does seem a general sense that autistic people are less interested in the hierarchy of things and more interested in the whys and wherefores and how things work and, you know, what we should be doing rather than, you know, who looks best doing it.
It's like dialogue over debate. It's not trying to force your like reality onto another person. It's like the sense of like there's creativity in just all of these equally valuable perspectives.
I see a thirst for cooperation amongst autistic people often, an actual thirst for it, because it's something that's lacking, something that's been because of the social knockbacks. So often it looks like a needy need to actually be cooperative on things.
I just like a lot of these posts, it's like they've opened something up, something new, something they may even thought wouldn't even happen themselves. Like an idea they may have had at their darkest time. It's like they wish they could do this, they wish they could do that. Or maybe they've got a hobby that they were ridiculed for, or an activity that they engross themselves in, they get ridiculed for, because what are you doing that for? You should be doing something else. And they turn it right round and they turn it into a business, or they turn it into something else, like an activity they enjoy doing. But it doesn't have to be a business, it can just be, it's just like that's like, it would help so many people, just seeing those sort of examples out there. and how some people that were really going through a hard time and questioning their own existence is now feeling more free because they've got the diagnosis or they've got the identity of feeling autistic, where before they just felt at this sort of kind of label of some kind of weirdo in society or outcast or any kind of words that they like to throw at. It's more hurtful, even though I would say weirdo is hurtful enough, but it's amazing the words people can come up with when they look to ridicule you or cast you aside.
I'm just looking at the display that Raymond is doing there of the website, and this is the kind of stuff that people are looking for, and they're off the wall kinds of things that you might not find anywhere else as well. I have a hidden disability badge, or it's too peoply outside. They're kind of cool.
The market I was at yesterday had a stall that was just full of little badges that sometimes were saying things like this, but sometimes were just, not really saying anything, which was beautiful. There were symbols, they were like, objects without meaning. And my mate was totally fascinated by them and got into a deep conversation with the stallholder. And it was kind of like I didn't want to assume anything, but it became quite a groove, Oh, and my mate is a coin collector, and he bought me 3 Chinese coins with holes in the middle, which I can now use for my I Ching readings. And, with divination, to receive something from someone else makes it almost more empowering. And so that was groovy as well.
That's really cool, Raymond.
Well, thanks everyone. That was a great discussion tonight, as always. And thanks to the people that shared these posts that we've talked about tonight, which was fantastic. A nice kind of varied kind of discussion topics that went through up and down, the emotions. It's great. So this is Harry's Facebook for Sunday, the 1st of June 2025, which is part of the Spectrum Voices Conversation, which is live every Sunday from 5:55 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. on Facebook Live, YouTube, and other platforms as well. So thank you once again. Really enjoyed tonight, everyone, and I'll hand over to Jules.
Yeah, thanks, Harry. A lot of thought and stimulation from those posts that you curate there. Thank you so much for doing that for everybody. At this point, I just remind people that Autistic Radio is made possible by Autistic Association, and I tell people about some of the things that Autistic Association and Autistic Radio are doing in the background with an open meeting.